And so would you always sleep next to the gun, would you?
Yeah, always. Like you're on duty 24 hours of the day. Apparently, on one of our leaves down in Vung Tau, I was supposed to have got drunk and we started a fight with some Americans. But see, I proved them all wrong. I ended up Commando of the Year. So
you were a gunner that never fired a gun
yeah,
until you got to Vietnam.
Yeah, infantry come across some dead bodies discovered around a crater. You know, you're in the war zone, they're the enemy, you know. Everybody really respects, we might call them grunts, but deep down everybody respects them because they're the ones out there doing all the hard yakka. Sounded like a gun. I said, no, this is the Olympics. This is not Vietnam, because it was, everybody is equal. It's like, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, solicitor, policeman, you get thrown in the army, everybody is the same equality.
John, just to start with, as we discussed, I want you to just try to give me a bit of a really brief summary going through your life from where you were born right up till now.
I was born in Surrey Hills, Sydney, the eldest of 10. Then we moved around quite a bit and settled down in old Balmain. And while at Balmain, I won selection for the 1968 Olympics. The same year, I received a Queen Scout Award, Duke of Edinburgh Award, which I received off the Duke of Edinburgh himself. And then come 69, won the lottery for the National Service, got called up for 2 years, ended up in artillery. The reason I was in artillery was everybody said being the Olympics I should be a PTI, which is the physical training instructor. So I put in for artillery. I got artillery, but I didn't get a PTI course. So I volunteered for Vietnam. Went to Vietnam 70, 71. When I come back from Vietnam, I wanted to be stationed in Sydney, and our unit was based in Townsville, so they put me on a PTI course. And after I completed the PTI course, I went back to Townsville, finished my 2 years, then I got out. 72, selected for the Munich Olympics. I was actually finished competing when I heard the shots from the massacre, the Israelis being shot. That shook me up. I gave up wrestling for a couple of years after that, and then 74 I made a comeback. Got selected to go to the World Championships in Istanbul, 74. 76 I won selection for the Montreal Olympics, but it's a ballot system. There's 10 wrestlers and they only picked 3, and they nominated me number 5, so I missed out. The Olympic Committee wanted to know why I come 8th in Munich, why I didn't get on the team, but at the time it was politics. After that I did coaching for a few years, then I got a bit restless and I joined one Commando Company. So in between making a living driving and doing Army Reserves part-time, that took most of my time up. I gave up coaching and got really involved with the reserves. In 83 I was nominated Commando of the Year, and I got out in 84. I did 6 years. Reason being is I've got 3 children, and we got my sister had a bit of trouble and we got her other 2 kids, so we ended up with 5 kids. And weekends my wife worked so I had to palm the kids off to my mother. And so that got too much. I had to give up the Army Reserves then. And then I took up wrestling coaching again. And over a period of years, I coached several Australian champions, one of which made it to the 2000 Olympics. In 1998, I was awarded the Gold Award for the Aboriginal Sportsman of the Year Gold Award. And 98, I was made a life member of the New South Wales Wrestling Association. Come 2000, I applied for a volunteer for the 2000 Olympics, and I was actually at the wrestling venues, which was quite good.
Oh, what was the background of your mother and father? Where were they from?
Well, my father was born in Condobolin, and his father is of Aboriginal descent, and actually the Wiradjuri tribe. And my mother's background, she was born in Adelaide, and her mother was from the Jarwin tribe up in Katherine, and she was one of the lost generations and brought up in Adelaide, and she was brought up with white people, and she married a white Australian, which is, he actually went to World War One, but when he married my grandmother, he was ostracised from the family. So, my mother was brought up in Adelaide, and at that time there was a lot of racial tensions and things like that.
So did you consider yourself Aboriginal? Was it something you thought about?
Everywhere I went, because my mother brought us up to be of Aboriginal descent, which I was proud of. And when I went to the Olympics, in the Army, people had asked where I come from. And actually when I was in the Commandos, I joined up in 78, one of the SAS Carter staff, he asked me what nationality I was, and when I told him that I was Koori, he just thought, I didn't, because the reason he caught on was there was an Aboriginal Carter staff that come from one of the infantry battalions, and he was the quartermaster, and I used to drink with him in the mess, and because he was good friends with the SAS guy, and he found out I was Aboriginal, like the whole concept of, because in Vietnam there was some SAS Aboriginals, and one of them actually got shot by his own man. Aboriginals make good warriors. But see, when I was younger, after I did the Outward Bound course, I was so super fit, and I was wrestling and training. My mother said, "Oh, why don't you join the Army or the Navy or,
How old were you then when she said that to you?
Well, I was 16, 17. See, at that time, 17 was the age limit for the Army. And when I turned 17, I was almost thinking about going in the Army, but my love of wrestling was so great. And when you're good at something, I just live for wrestling.
So in what order did you join the Nashos and then got selected for the Olympics? So what chronological order did
Well, actually, you have to
happen?
rephrase that. I won the lottery for the Nashos. I didn't join, I won the lotteries. See, National Service, it's like a lottery system, and my ball fell out, so I had to go through all the psychological, physical and medical profile. Then you got called up, and went to Kapuka, did 3 months down there, then I went to Holsworthy, and I did a gunner's course. So when you go through what they call recruits, they have one night there where they have a list of options, all the different units that you can go in, and it was only core units like infantry, artillery, armour, engineers, and you didn't have any specific jobs. So when you got put into that slot and you did your training, then they allocated what you did. You know, if you wanted to be a driver, a signaller, or whatever. And like I put artillery and then infantry, and then I got artillery because everybody said, oh, you want to be a physical training instructor. So that's how I ended up in artillery.
So when you won the lottery, joined the Nashos, were you angry or were you sad? I mean, you said that wrestling was what you really wanted to be doing, and this would have interrupted this. What was your reaction to being?
Well, actually, I was over the moon because you know, like I said, I had contemplated going in the army, but the thing that kept me out was the wrestling. So I thought, oh well, because I always thought, you know, not having education, I could learn something in the army. So when I went in, everybody when you do your first PT lesson, what it is how many push-ups or how many sit-ups. It's like a physical examination, and then what they do is they work out who's the fittest, and they put you in ranks of fitness, so that all the unfit people were on the left, all the fit people were on the right, and it went in order. And I was the fittest, and I was up the front, and I was the smallest. There was me and two other guys that were about 5'2" in the old scale. So I was actually the fittest in my platoon, and so I was up the front. But everybody's, because physical training instructors run the gym, and me being the fittest, everybody said, oh, you should be a physical training instructor. And I always thought, being in the Scouts, and I was always the best, I thought, well, SAS is the best. And I contemplated, I thought I would have liked to have done a Carter course. But when you get slotted, when you put down your preferences, you end up in that preference. It's being a national serviceman, it's hard to you know, change your mind. So I did the 2 years in artillery, and then it was 8 years after I got out of the reserves that I felt there's something I missed in the military, that I didn't attain that level of complete. Yeah.
So was joining the army also a way of getting out of working at the sock factory?
Oh, it was. I mean, it was the military that changed my mind not to go back and work in a confined place. But yeah, and the comradeship, you know, the mates that you meet in the army, you know, it was, everybody is equal. It's like, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, solicitor, policeman, you get thrown in the army, everybody is the same equality.
And the fact that your brother was in the army, did that influence you to join as well?
Well, that was one of the other reasons I went in artillery, because I thought I might be put in, because he was in a good unit, and he used to tell me all about his mates and stories and stuff, and yeah, but I ended up. What you've got to realise is When you go in as a national serviceman, what you're doing is you're reinforcing the regular army. And like in Vietnam, if you got selected to go to Vietnam and you had 6 months left in national service and you went to Vietnam, when your 6 months is up, they send you home. So that leaves a blank spot in a unit in Vietnam. So they send what they call reinforcements, and the reinforcements are made up of national service. So a lot of national servicemen, you do your basic training, your core training, Canungra, and then you get sent straight to Vietnam, and the only training that you've ever done is all the basic stuff. So when it comes down to like actually firing a gun, or learning how to operate weapons, it's all just basic principles. And it was like a learning curve. When you land in country, anything that you learn in gunnery school is totally different.
So why didn't you join the regular army?
Excuse me.
You can have a sip of water.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, I was enjoying life, and I was doing that apprenticeship, and I was going really good with the wrestling. And I thought, oh no, I thought that when you sign up, I just thought, well, if I didn't like it, say for 3 years, it's like a contract. Once you sign it, you can't get out of it. And the Navy was 6 years. I thought, what if I'm claustrophobic or go in the Navy and don't like it, But I got to enjoy the Army. I had a few little bad experiences. When they put me on the PDI course, the physical training instructor's course, I failed the course. And when I got sent back to my unit, the OC of the company, he gave me a good talking.
This is before you went to Vietnam.
Now, when I came back from Vietnam, we were stationed in Townsville.
All right, well, we'll just wait a minute there. I wanted to ask you, before you joined the Army even, before you even went to Mexico City, had you been following what was going on in Vietnam?
Oh, you'd read in the papers about Australians killed. I mean, it's like it's like incidents that happen like in Afghanistan or Iraq. You only hear the things where somebody gets killed or there's some sort of terror thing that's going on. So you heard about like Long Tan and things like that because there was Australians killed, But the everyday life of a Vietnam soldier, it's... I remember just before I went in the Army, they had like a documentary and, where they went around the different people in the different units and that sort of thing. But you didn't see the real horrors of war, what was going on there. When you went through Canungra, they tell you all these things about booby traps, and about everybody's a suspected Viet Cong, So that when you're going through the villages, you think, is that a Viet Cong there? Or, it kind of put you on your toes. But so I went over there in 70, 71, but I was talking to some of the boys that have went over there in the earlier years. It was pretty hectic then.
And in those earlier years when you were a civilian and wrestling and whatever, were you interested in what was going on in Vietnam?
No.
Just wasn't part of your life?
No. I mean, to me, war was where, like I used to watch, you know, like the John Wayne movies where somebody actually that Green Beret movie came out just before I went, got called up for national service. You see these guys, you know, they're the elite of the country and they get killed, and you think, well, you know, if they're the best trained soldiers in the world and they get killed, you know, and it really confused me when I was in Canungra, because they try to jam so much into you that you think, well, you know.
What were they teaching you at Canungra then?
Like the day was kind of worked out. There was, you'd have a physical section where you used to march. They had obstacle courses. They had things like map reading and a lot of things. Then they'd be telling you about some of the... over 4 weeks, they jammed so much into you that it was hard to keep awake sometimes. You'd be going to sleep. And but they'd more or less be exaggerating, you know, the worst case scenario, what might happen. So when you lob into Vietnam, you think, worst case, what's going to happen? And what was a bit of a shock for me was I went through one of the villages on the way out to the Horseshoe where I was stationed, and all these dead bodies were in this compound. And they had all this white powder over them. Apparently there was some sort of ambush the night before, and they killed all these Viet Cong, and they were all... I mean, you know...
That was a nice welcome, wasn't it?
Yeah. And after all the things that they teach you in Canungra, you think, you know, about these terrorists, what the females do, and, you know, so you always think of worst case scenarios until, you know.
And did you have, it's hard, I know it's hard to differentiate between what you think now and what you thought about then, but did you have back then any opinion about whether the Vietnam War was right, wrong, or you just didn't care that much?
Well, being a patriotic Australian, and, you know, I mean, everybody's proud to, like, all the servicemen, you know, that went to Afghanistan and Iraq, all proud Australians who represent the country. Back in them days, as a national serviceman, you know, that Anzac spirit was still there, and we were fighting because the government said we had to be over there. And the story that they told us when we went through Canungra was the domino theory, that China had come down, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, Australia. So you think you're over there stopping the Red Peril, but after years later reading some of the history of Vietnam, we should never have been there. And when you read about 73,000 Americans killed, well, that's a lot of people. We lost 500. And actually a good mate of mine got killed. When we went through Canungra, he was in the Armour Corps. And when we used to do these force marches, we used to make up little songs, and he used to sing this song, "You'll come home in a plastic bag, doo-dah, doo-dah." And he actually got killed. And what hit home with me was that his brother was on my gun, because I was in Vung Tau at the time in the hospital when they brought his body in. He'd been on he was an APC driver, and a helicopter come down for resups, and he jumped on the turret of the the APC, and the chopper blade was too close, clipped him. He sustained severe head injuries and he died. And his brother, when I got back to the Horseshoe, his brother was packing his bags, and I said, what happened? Well, you going home early? He said, yeah, my brother got killed, and it was his brother that was brought into the hospital when I was there. And he come from a family of 10, and they were Irish, and he had to accompany the body in the C-130 coming back to Australia. And I mean, that kind of really hit home what the war, some of the things that happened.
So many ways to get killed, isn't there, when you've got that much machinery?
Exactly. And when you read about the history of how some of the soldiers died there, a lot of them were by accident, or a lot of from the mines that they laid, some of them by accidental death. It wasn't only the war that killed a lot of people. It's like all the friendly fire from the Iraq war, from all those soldiers that got killed by our own men. That's the fortunes of war.
So why was it, John, that you put your hand up and said, pick me for Vietnam?
Well, like I said, so I thought, so being in the Scouts and liking the outdoors, when I found out what artillery was all about, that I wasn't going to be a PDI, I wasn't going to be a gym instructor, something that I love, and then you find out that you're going to be on a gun, or you're going to be put in a unit where, you might go out the bush once a month or whatever. I thought, well, Vietnam's got to be better than this. So I put my hand up, maybe because all my mates, we all volunteered. There was other incentives, probably the money, to see some other country, just the experience of a lot of soldiers. I suppose that's the ultimate, to test your skills, isn't it? I think that's one of, well, that's the reasons I put down, just for the experience. I mean, I've been to an Olympics. To go to a war, it's a totally different experience, but it brought back a lot of bad memories for me, because like that traumatic experience being in the boys' home, to be a national service and you're a RIO, what a lot of people don't realise is you get units that train in Australia. They might do 1, 2, 3 years training together as a unit. They do all the jungle training. They do everything together. They work as a team. It's like the cycling team, that went to the Olympics. The reason they won is they trained as a team. The hockey players train as a team. A reinforcement is somebody that comes in like a reserve that nobody knows, and that was a bit of a culture shock too. Landing in Vietnam and then being taken out to the Horseshoe and then put with all these strange guys that I've never ever met before.
How did you get ready to go?
Well, there was the basic training, and then there was the core training. The basic training was done in Kapuka, because at that time there was 3 training outlets, Puckapunyal, Kapuka, and Singleton. But core training is where the different armour, you've got different infantry, armour, artillery, you've got the different units. And what you do is, while in recruits, you nominate what unit you want to go to, and then after you get to that unit, then you can nominate what position you want to be in that particular unit. Now, not always you get your first preference. So there's a lot of guys might have put in for artillery and they got infantry because that was their number 2 slot, and they were short of infantrymen. So, but a lot of guys, when I went through, because Vietnam was on, a lot of guys, I'm not going in infantry, I'm putting in for something else. But when you get what they call core training, is it's like they teach you the basic skills of being a gunner, what you do on the gun, and the different activities that revolve around being a gunner, and how the sighting of the gun, about all the ammunition, the charge bags, safety, and then they explain different positions in the artillery and that sort of thing. And that goes on for about 4 weeks. Now, I had a funny experience. The first day we get back, we did basic training. Then we had the Christmas break. And then straight after Christmas we go to Holsworthy. And then after the first day they put up a roster for picket duty, so that you do all your drill during the day, and then there's like 7 guys get nominated for the picket, which is like a guard duty at the unit. Out of the 7, they pick the best dressed, and he has the night off. So what they do is they have a drill. The head sergeant comes down, inspects or the officer or sergeant on duty that night, inspects the guard, picks out the best picket, and then he has the night off. This particular day, we get the RSM. And because we'd just come back from holidays, all our drill timing was out of synchronisation, and he blew us all up. He picked me as the best picket, but because the drill was so bad, he made us do 2 nights. So I missed out getting the night off, plus I had to do the next night. And that was a bit of a bad experience, but the RSM, everybody shows respect for RSMs, because usually they've got the deepest voice and they're so authoritarian that everybody respects them. And so you do all your, after you do that training, then they put out a selection on what sort of position you want, and everybody puts down some sort of skill that they're related to. If you don't fall in that category, you end up as a gunner, which is like being a foot soldier in infantry. So when you get that allocation, when the training's finished, then they send you to a unit. Now, just prior to sending you to a unit, because they wanted reinforcements for Vietnam, they ask for volunteers. So they take names down, and then probably, I think it's almost 100% of the volunteers that volunteer go to Vietnam. Artillery, I thought, was too dull, uninteresting. I thought maybe going to Vietnam, things might be different, which was quite true.
You arrived in Saigon first?
Saigon, Ton Son Nhut Airport.
Ton Son Nhut Airport. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, it's just that smell of Vietnam. And the smell stays with you for the whole time that you're there until the time you leave.
Describe it.
You know, it's just that, well, it's that muggy, and there's a lot of rubbish in Saigon. And I mean, they're not the most hygienic of people. And even when you go through the villages, and we were okay at the Horseshoe because we were civilised out there. But whenever you went through any of the villages or where there was population of Vietnamese, it was just that smell, and it doesn't leave your nostrils until you leave the country. But when we got to Tonsanut, we had to change, get into a military plane because the airfields in Nui Dada are not as commercial.
And when did you find out what team you were going to be in? Was that in Nui Dat that you were put in?
Oh, when I got to Nui Dad, because I wanted to do one of the guys. There were different. There was different positions, and there was a position there for a batman for one of the officers in a forward observer team. They go out with the infantry. I thought, oh, that's what I want. And then I ended up, they said, oh, you're going to be a gunner in 106, out on one of the guns. I was on Delta gun. Now, when I got to the Horseshoe, Delta gun crew were on their 2 days leave in Vung Tau. So they put me on Alpha gun. And one of the guys in Alpha gun, I got good mates with. He said, oh, that George Gardner, because he was the sergeant on Delta gun, they said he's a real bastard. He's the worst. That's the worst gun in the battery. And I thought, oh, what am I let myself in for? So when they come back from their 2 days leave, I went down. I got introduced, and with the guns in a battery, like a static position, you got all these sandbags that go around the gun, and then just at the back of the gun, you got sandbags built up with, and then you got corrugated iron that create, like that's your living area. So you got on either side of the dome galvanised iron, because on top of the galvanised iron there's sandbags. So everything's sandbagged, and you kind of sleep on stretchers in a little, like a little area inside, like a little cavern. So you got all these, about 3 lots of caverns with guys sleeping in, they call them hooches, and so that's where you live. And like they got a toilet, they had a toilet block, which what a bulldozer just digs a hole in the ground, and then they put perspex and the toilet on that, and it was quite civilised, So, and they actually had a kitchen, and then they rebuilt another kitchen because they'd been in the Horseshoe for quite a while. Now in the Horseshoe, we had 7 battalion, and occasionally we'd get Americans come in because they had big guns. We had 105mm guns, whereas they had 8-inch guns, which are quite big, and they're on tracks.
And they work beside you?
No, they actually, just imagine the shape of a horseshoe. The entrance to the Horseshoe was in the gap. And if you go inside the Horseshoe, there's a road that went around to the right-hand side of the Horseshoe. Artillery was on the right-hand side of the entrance to the Horseshoe. In the front of us was a minefield, and then further out was Dat Do, a little village. And then further over was the Long High Mountains, so that because there was a lot of firing, a lot of our firing was on the Long Highs. Now, So when I get put into that gun crew, you know, I didn't know what went on. It took me quite a while to start to learn different things, because you only learn the bare basics of how a gun operates. The sighting of the gun, the elevation, the bombs, so with the bombs, you got a cartridge, and it's got 7 bags of ammunition. Now, just imagine, so each bag represents a kilometre, because the guns had a 7-kilometre range. So if it went, had to go 2 kilometres, 2 charge bags. That's basically the basic principles of how they used to operate. And some of the different, the bombs that you had illumination, which was like a white bomb, and then you had phosphorus and high explosive. High explosive was the drab orange, and so you had all the bombs were stored separate, and then you had fuses, and then you had the cartridges, because all the cartridges have got all the, you know, the charge in. So when you have a fire mission, they nominate, you know, you get a fire mission, whatever gun. If it's fire mission battery, 6 guns go into action, and then they're given orders, elevation, what charge, and the sergeant or the bombardier relays all that to the gunners. So they tell you what sort of bomb it's going to be, so you know what fuse to put on. If it's illumination, you've got to the fuse has got a setting on it, so that when it goes up to a certain altitude, they explode, pop out. There was one night there we fired 270 canisters.
Wow.
So there was big contact going on.
Do you know what that was about? What particular?
No.
What
happened was I think there was some sort of cordon off type ambush setup thing, and when it got sprung, so they need illumination to see what's, you know, if somebody might have got shot or killed, or you know, it's usually after the actions happen. They need that illumination to, you know, see what's going on. Yeah, that was pretty hectic that night. But the daily routine of the being a gunner is that you get up in the morning, you know, military, everybody's got to have a shave.
What time would you get up?
Well, that depended, because, see, being a gunner, you're on call 24 hours of the day, and you might fire a couple of times of a night time. Like that particular night, that went for a couple of hours, you know, because not only did you fire high explosives, but illumination, and then, so what they used to fire what they call H&Is, was harass and indiction. Now what they'd do was the Army intelligence would, you know, allocate different areas around our perimeter where there might be likely Viet Cong movement, and that'd have to be cleared by the different army units where they were. So imagine if you're a Viet Cong walk along this track and all of a sudden a bomb come falling on you. Well, this is what harass and indiction was. And that had happened any time of the day, any time of the night. And the big thing was if they had a fire mission battery, was when they needed all the guns, because there might be some sort of, they might need artillery support to cut off the enemy, or, you know.
How were your ears? They must have taken a battering themselves.
Yeah, well, you're supplied with ear muffs, but if you're sighting the gun, you virtually had to have one over. We used to just put one finger in our ear, so we can get all the coordinates in the other ear, and then you pull the, it's. But I think the worst experience for me was we went out. We left the Horseshoe. They sent one of the guns out at bush. There was our gun and an American gun. The American gun was an 8-inch, and it was on tracks, and that was right next to us, probably about 20 metres away. And they probably supplied long range, whereas we were short. And what happened was, if they had a fire mission during the night, you'd be sleeping, and the recoil from a gun travels forward of a gun, so that, you don't hear all the vibrations at the back of the gun. It's all forward. So even in the Horseshoe, Delta gun was the front gun. So whenever somebody had a fire mission, even if you were sleeping, everything used to travel forward. But when these 8-inch guns went off, your stretcher would go about 2 or 3 inches off the floor, and it was terrifying, And so there's a lot of nights that you don't get any sleep.
So what about your daily routine then? Like, apart from when you get up, how would the day run for you?
Well, typical military, a shave and a shower, breakfast, and you'd have to go in. Half the gun crew would go. See, 3 men could operate a gun, so you send half the crew up for breakfast, and then the other crew, and like that, so that there was always somebody there if there was a fire mission battery. And then they'd have communications in the mess, so that if all of a sudden there's a fire mission and you're halfway through breakfast, you have to run down to the gun and that sort of thing, But there was always maintenance, everyday maintenance. Not only did you clean the gun, but you had to clean your weapon and all the other weapons that you had. Like we had an M60, M79, those sort of things. So when we went out bush, you have to take all that arsenal with you. And I was talking to a guy that was in Coral, and he said, when he went for a Canungra, they only used the Owen machine guns, and he said they never fired an M60. And then later on, they bought the M60s, and I mean, when the gun was getting overtaken by Viet Cong, some of them didn't know how to fire an M60. So, this is what I'm saying about reinforcement, You don't always get that sort of training that a regular soldier gets, or if you're a lucky Nasho where you go into the unit before they leave Vietnam, that's where you get that experience. And the bondship with the men are closer too.
So we'll talk about that whole issue. First of all, from the training side, what had you not been trained in when you got to Vietnam that you did? What didn't you know when you got to Vietnam as far as training goes? You mentioned that the guns and stuff. You hadn't fired before, etc.
I never fired the gun.
You
never touched the gun.
When you were back in Australia?
Yeah, never touched the gun. Everything was theory. They took us out to a firing range, and they had other gunners, qualified gunners, fire a gun, and we just saw all the procedure. Because imagine 100 guys on the course. You can't all have a turn each.
So you were a gunner that never fired a gun
until
you got to Vietnam.
Yeah, and it took me. And what you got to realise is, like they give you like a setting, and they say -3 or -4, and then whatever that's on there, you got to. It's where I learned like mathematics. I wasn't too crash on in mathematics, but when you got to do these calculations, when he's given you these calculations, and you've got to put them on the setting, and excuse me. See, they've got surveyors that put out posts, and then you line the scope, and over night time, they're like barber poles, red and white, and then you line up halfway between the two, and that gives you the angle of the gun.
What about getting on with the you said, you know, being inserted into a team where you didn't know the blokes and having to get on with them in this really tense environment. How did you find that at the Horseshoe? How did you get on with everyone?
You know, everybody, they start to talk to you. It's like anywhere, you know. It's like now going to these Vietnam veteran functions. Everybody, as soon as you meet somebody and you start to talk, we're all on the same level. So when you start to talk to different people, some of them you get closer, some of them not. But usually you learn a lot of things from people. But what I dreaded was the sergeant, because like I didn't like people that were, you know, that experienced with that guy running the boys' home. You know, if you get authoritarian people like that, they can demolish your psychological.
And what was he doing to you that was upsetting you when you were working at the Horseshoe?
No, well, actually, that's where the mateship come in, and we started talking, telling jokes, and because I'm one of those people, you know, I could kind of blend in, and then I found him to be the best sergeant, and we were he had our gun operating. We were always the first in action. The reason being is because people respected him, because he was a real professional. And the reason that other people didn't like him is because everything had to be right. I remember we had a fire mission where somebody we were firing illumination and somebody accidentally grabbed the bomb. And and when he saw it was going to go in with the illumination, he just picked this bomb up and he threw it over there, and he was really hostile. But you can imagine, I mean, if that went in there, it could have killed some of our troops, you know. But his professionalism, people respected him, and you know, because we started to work as a team. You know, we went on our 2 days leave in Vung Tau together. You know, you ate, slept, everybody become really close friends. But you respect people that you respect. You respect them because you know, they're professional. You know, like being a champion. You got to be the best. You understand what I'm saying? If you're somebody that's elite, you know, and you can see somebody leading by leadership that way, you give him so much respect, and this is what I did from our sergeant.
How often would you go out bush? These are out on patrols, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
We did two. Where we left the Horseshoe, we went out bush out near a rubber plantation, and the other time was when we went to Bridget. Now, Bridget was a support base at the bottom of the Long Highs, and from where Horseshoe is, it was to the left of the Long Highs, and it was a gun. It was like a support base where they had infantry, 7 battalion. They had mortars there, and they had one gun. And this one gun was like a Meccano set. It was World War II type thing, and it's like a Meccano set. Whereas the guns that we had in Horseshoe were just one piece. This you can take the barrel off, and you can just about clean everything separate. The reason they needed that gun there was to get at the back of the long highs, or where we couldn't get with the other gun. And that was in the sand dunes, because Bridget was right near the beach. So it's like being in the Middle East in the sand deserts, because while we were in the, most you had to wear boots everywhere you went, because if something happened, you've got to be ready for action. But it was totally different there.
You started a little bit to describe the gun position up there in the Horseshoe, and you said there was a bit of a dugout. What facilities did you have there around the gun?
We had, like in what they call the gun bay, to one side of the gun bay you had containers where all the bombs and all the cartridges were kept, so that they kind of didn't get weathered. And then out the front they had a pole, one of the cartridge containers in the ground, and that was like where if you wanted to go for a wee, and at one stage the ablution block was in front of us, and then they rebuilt another one up the top of the Horseshoe, so that if ever you wanted to go for a number 2, you had to kind of walk halfway up the mountainside to go to the ablution blocks. So it was like multi-use by 7 and artillery. And the sleeping bays were like galvanised iron, and you had 2 mattresses, 2 sleeping posies. And I think there was probably about, I can't remember offhand, but probably 3 or 4 bays, so that there's 2 in each bay. Because what happened was sometimes you get a forward observer party to give them a break from being out in the bush all the time. They used to put them on a gun, just so that they're away from what they were doing all the time, out on the sharp end, if you know what I mean. So that way, I was talking to one of the guys that was in the FO party, and he used to tell me about some of the things they used to get up to, and it was some very interesting stories,
And so would you always sleep next to the gun, would you?
Yeah, always. Like you're on duty 24 hours of the day, and the only time you're away from the gun was if you had your 2 days rest in Vung Tau, or you went on your R&R, or something happened to you and you had to go to the hospital. That was the only time that you were away from the gun.
And how many was in a gun team for a 105?
Between 7 and 8. But like I say, if some guy was away, on leave, you might have 5 or 6. But you only need about 3 people to run the gun.
And what was your role in the gun crew?
We used to chop around. The only job that we didn't do was give orders, which was a bombardier or a sergeant. And we used to, so during, every day you'd get a resup of ammunition. If you didn't fire much, you didn't, So every day they were updating you on you had to have X amount of bombs and cartridges. So every time a truck come in, you'd be there breaking the boxes open, and then you have to get rid of all the rubbish and that sort of thing. So, you know, there was things to do every day, and at one stage there, to break the monotony, I got a fitness book sent over to me from Australia, and we started a little circuit program. So a couple of the guys from the other gun would come over, and I'd put them through a circuit, and you know, and sometimes we used to run around the inside of the Horseshoe, get permission off the sergeant, you know, just to break the monotony of sitting there, you know, manning the gun.
And when you had to sort of get all that ammo off the truck and break it up and stack it, it must have been hard work in the heat.
Yeah, well, they didn't have forklifts, so everything had to be manhandled. And like some of those, they're very meticulously boxed. You got a wooden box, and then you got thick cardboard cylinders that had the everything in. And then you had to unload that, and then you got a box with all the fuses. So the bombs are useless unless you got a fuse in. So the bombs used to come all in one piece, but you had to, you know, things had to be packed separately, and like the bombs, sharp end up, placed upright. That way you got more in, and then you had all the cartridges stacked. And every time there's a fire mission, I'd tell you how many charge bags. So you had to, with the discarded, see the charge bags were cordite, and it's like if you ever see those fuel tablets, you put a match to, they just light real bright. Well, with cordite, that's exactly what happens. We used to burn them off. They used to accumulate, and we used to just lay them in a long row, put a match to them, or hexi block to them, and as soon as they ignite, they go up in flames. And when we had the toilet block down to the front of where we were, we used to clean the ablution blocks out, throw a few charge bags in, a bit of petrol, then throw a match in, and that it used to clean out so that they wouldn't smell all the time. But one night we had a big fire mission. We threw in too many bags, and it blew the toilet to the smithereens.
Blew the shit out of it.
Blew the shit out of it. Yeah. And there was I'll tell you a funny story. This guy come back from his 2 days down in Vung Tau, because you got to realise, while you're on the gun, they allow you two beers a day, and so when you go on leave, you really hook in. And this guy had false teeth, and he was that hungover the next day. He had a chunder into the box, and his false teeth. So he's there with the fish, trying to. I mean, otherwise he would have had to go through. I mean, little funny stories like that, you know. But
in a fire mission, you know, you've got all those different bits stacked up: the cartridges, the bombs, the cordite bags. How does it all get put together when a fire mission comes in?
Oh, well, when he, like, if they say HE, with HE, all you do is you put a fuse on. It's only the illumination or the phosphorus that you have to put a timer on. But
so when you were firing HE, those fuses were just contact fuses, or?
No, they're like, just imagine they're like a pointy projectile with a thread on. And on the top of the bomb's got a thread. and you just screw it on, and then when that reaches a velocity and it hits on impact, it explodes. Although we had a fire mission one, excuse me, we had a fire mission one day where prematurely exploded over a village, and we got a bit of flack back from that. It was probably something to do with the fuse, with the fuse, you know, because they're supposed to hit on impact, not in the air.
So those fuses wouldn't be put on until you had a fire mission?
No.
Must have been fairly frantic work when the fire mission came in then to get it all slotted together.
Yeah. Actually, well, we could have put the fuses on before, because I mean, it's been over 30 odd years, I can't remember. Maybe might have put those fuses on before, because, you know, I mean, until that bomb makes contact with the ground, it's and with the charges, so you need the primer at the back to set the charge off, which creates the propulsion to push the projectile out.
Okay, so you'd have to get the brass case and then put the charge bags inside that.
Yeah.
And then the bomb went on top of the cartridge case.
Yeah. And then you push it up the breech, close, and then everything's sighted, and then bang.
And when those shells are prepared and they're all together and you're ramming them into the breech, how much does that weigh, that whole thing together?
Probably 10 or 15 kilos. So when you get the fire mission, they kind of tell you what it is. So you got a couple of guys fixing the bombs up, and they put them. We had like a pallet off the ground, so they were put on, so that we were ready, you know, like straight away. And we had guys fixing them up. The only time we had was when we fired those 270 canisters. That's when we had to bring ammunition from some of the other guys had to transport the stuff down to us, and then we had to open it up, and you know, that was a bit frantic that night. But that's probably the most hectic night we had.
So you'd have like a little production line going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all teamwork, you know, and it's like I said, my sergeant was spot on, so that as soon as he started shouting orders, everybody knew their job, and bang, bang.
And I suppose after a big fire mission, you'd have a bit of cleaning up to do with all the brass.
Oh, yeah. All the cannons, because they had to bring it, when they bring the trucks around, everything goes on the back of the trucks, and so everything gets disposed of somewhere else, because, so you can imagine, like a lot of things, the Viet Cong booby traps and stuff, a lot of the surplus stuff left over have been used on VC weapons. So what they try and minimise that by carting all the rubbish away and getting it disposed of somewhere, you know. I don't actually know what the procedure was, but yeah. Like when we used to go through the towns, we used to throw lollies and things to the kids, but then when they captured Viet Cong, or, you know, there was an ambush, they'd find army rations, and then orders come out that we weren't allowed to do that sort of thing, but, you know, it went on, yeah.
And when you were firing on a fire mission, how many rounds do you reckon you could get out in a minute?
Oh, probably about 4 or 5, because they get the orders, and then when it's, they might say 5 rounds fired for effect, and you know, you just keep putting them in, and you fire your 5, and that's it. It's not like in World War II, you know, when there's the hordes and you kind of got to keep it up. It was a bit hard to rate how many you can do, because you've got to take into account the orders. Now, if they say 10 rounds for effect, you could probably gauge it that way, because you've already got the orders. It's just a matter of keep loading the same thing in. Then the guy sights the gun, and then you pull. So it's as fast as you put them in, because as soon as he puts it in and he pops it out, the guy sets up the gun, and then they load. So while he's loading, the gun's already been set up. So it wouldn't take that long, you know. When you're in that sort of situation, you don't think about those sort of things, you know.
And were the guns in pits, or were they just sitting above the ground?
They were above the ground, and like I say, surrounded by a bunker, which was probably a bit over high than with me. It's probably up to my chest, but a normal person probably up to their waist. It was just enough so that you got cover if you had enemy fire. But like I say, in front of us, we had barbed wire, and there was a minefield. Because at one stage, the tour, there was a bulldozer down there, bulldozing them. I think that was after, I was over there 70, 71. But see, a lot of the minefields, when they found that they were useless, that the Viet Cong was stealing them and using them on us, that's when they start to get rid of them. And then they found that there was more Aussies getting killed delousing them than there was laying them or walking on traps. So they used bulldozers in the big areas, you know. They had big rollers on and they just roll over, and you can see a little sparks fly. You know.
And sort of how far away was your gun from that wire then?
Oh, probably about 30 metres or so. And yeah, it would be about 30 metres, but they had pickets like for security of the night time. They had pickets all the time. Like I think 7 Battalion operated during the day, and when they went out on patrol, artillery took over. And in the observatory post, we had starlight scopes, which is magic. I mean, you could see everything. There was some quite interesting nights there, because when you look up at the stars, you see the Southern Cross, and there, because you don't have the pollution, the clarity of the star is just like, you know, like being back home out in the bush, you know. But
do you know if around that perimeter any chemical defoliants had been used or were being used?
Well, I've actually got photos. I imagine probably to some extent there would have, probably down where all the minefields and that were. But I've got actual photos of the Horseshoe. In the wet season, it's green. It's like there's green grass everywhere, and in the dry season, it's just like a crater, and that's what it was, a crater. And there's nothing, and it's just the two pictures of exactly the same spot. But most days you get the C-130s flying over, and you can see this mist spray. And we were told that it was to kill the mosquitoes, but I've heard other rumours that it was the Agent Orange that by spraying it in that form, it kind of helped keep the defoliage down. You know, but I mean that's stories that you hear after. See, you've got to realise, being like a Nasher, the only bits of war stories or stories we heard about what was going on the outside was when the sergeant had an O group, which is a meeting, and he'd get his orders from the boss, and they'd say, oh, such and such happened here, such and such happened there. You wouldn't have you wouldn't know what anybody was doing, you know.
And in the gun areas and in your sleeping areas, was it a problem when it rained?
Oh, well, we were lucky because, we had a couple of carpenters there, and we had with the ammo boxes, you know, they built proper flooring, and we kind of had, we kind of created guttering so that when the water come, kind of flowed away from our living areas. The only frightening thing about being in that little confined spot is one day we had a crepe, which is one of those little funny snakes they got over there. Got it under one of the sleeping bays. We had to pull everything up to find it because one bite of them and you're dead. So, I mean, that was a bit horrifying for them. But
just another way to get killed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And did you feel that you were a bit discriminated against because you were a Nasho?
Oh, well, nearly everybody was at Nasho. The only thing you can always tell a Nasho, he'd be counting down how many days he had. So we had guys that were in the unit. They did their after they did their corps training, they went straight to the unit. So they trained with the unit, and when they went to Vietnam, they might have had 6 months or whatever. And as soon as their time was up, a lot of them pulled the pin and went home. But some of them just signed on for that little extra period, probably to get the 2 medals. But I think it was just, you know, that sort of thing.
And during your time in the army, do you ever feel that you were discriminated against because you were Aboriginal?
No, well, like I say, we had all different nationalities, and everybody was treated normal. Occasionally you get somebody, I used to have a moustache, and so a lot of people thought I was Italian, and when they'd ask me, I'd say, no, I'm of Aboriginal descent. And they, oh, you know, you're not, how come you're not dark? But if you look at the Australian government years ago, that's what they try to breed out the Aboriginals by, you know, when white and black made together, the colour fades, and that's why the Lost Generation, when you see about that movie with those little Aboriginal girls, they had a white father, and they were taken away so that they can be brought up to think white instead of Aboriginal.
But you never felt that people racially abused you because
No.
you were Aboriginal in the army?
No. But what you've got to look at is a lot of people didn't come in contact, because of the population of Aboriginals. There's some people might have went to school and never seen an Aboriginal in their life, if you understand what I mean. Because back in them days, Aboriginals they've got their own identity now, and they're all over the place. Whereas before, they used to just live in their little on their missions, or you know.
Now, you said you got a bit of a training group going for a bit of a jog around there.
Yeah.
It must have been pretty hot to be doing that sort of thing.
Well, like I say, it was just a way of, like not everybody was alcoholics, and like most days I'd give my 2 cans away, because like I said, I never drank before I went to Vietnam. But I mean, on a really hot day, I used to drink just one and give the other one away. But you find that when people on their 2 days leave, that's when they used to, let their hair out.
And what did you do on your 2 days leave down in Vung Tau?
Oh, same as every. The first time, when you hit, what happens is when you get your 2 days leave, you go back to Nui Dad, and then you get your civvies and stuff that you're going to use in Vung Tau, and then you climb on a truck, and they've got like a convoy, and goes around all the other units. You get dropped off at, and there's probably about 3 or 4 trucks, and they all head towards Vung Tau. And then the good thing about Vung Tau is you don't have to carry a weapon anywhere. You know, everything's handed in, and you could move around. And they usually put on a party for you. 44-gallon drums full of alcohol. They got the swimming pool, the big barbecue. But if you've been out bush for a while, a lot of times you head straight into town because it's the female companionship that a lot of people miss. That's where you kind of get introduced to the girls. And it was funny because my first visit there, because I'm only 5'2", and Vietnamese are only small people, and they thought I was number one because I was short, and women were fascinated with me because he was what they call uk daloi, which is red rat for Vietnamese, and he's one their height compared to some of the, like all my mates were well over 5'8" or 9 or 6 foot, you know.
What's the business with Uktaloi?
Well, on all the trucks, all the Aussie trucks, we used to have a little red kangaroo. And the Vietnamese thought it was a red rat. So they used to call it Uktaloi, and that's what it means, red rat. So that's what they used to call Aussie soldiers, Uktaloi. And you're either number 1 or number 10. You know?
Number 1 being the best.
The best, and number 10, you know, the worst.
When you said that there was like 44 gallon drums of grog and stuff, where was that being put on for you?
That was the Peter Badco Club.
What was that place?
That was in Vung Tau, and it was the Army's logistics centre, you know, where a lot of people, they call the pogos, the people who like in administration, Q stores, and a lot of your supplies and stuff come from there because they had the dock there, and everything that they needed in Nui Dat was transported over there. But yeah, it was like the recreational centre too, and they had there was the Peter Badco Club. They had rooms there, and then they had the R&I centre in Vung Tau because it was a little bit further into town, so that if you couldn't get out to the Peter Badco, you go to the R&I, and usually there was always a spare bed where you can prop for the night. That's if you didn't end up with a girl, which most people do. But they had a curfew on every night, so you had to be off the streets. If you weren't off the streets, the MPs would come and haul you in.
So tell us about these girly bars then.
Well, I got a shock because, I've never experienced anything like that. And when you go into these bars, see how the women make their money is you've got to buy drinks. Now they call them teas, and you think they're actually drinking alcohol, but it's probably tea or watered down drink. And every time you buy them a drink, they get a profit off that drink. And like if you take them home out of the bar, well, so much goes to the mama-san of the bar, and then she gets so much, you know. But if you're going to take a woman home for the night, you agree on the price before you leave. And that's where, you know, the bargaining comes in. And I mean, the first time I took a girl home, there was a room about as big as this, and there was a double bed, and there was mattresses and other beds, and there was a little cooking area, and she had a mother and a father there, and she had 2 or 3 kids, and you say, because I come from a family of 10, and you think, my God, what's happening there? And you know that it's too late, you can't back out, because she's already jumped in this little Lambretta and she's taking you around all these streets, and you don't know how to get back to anywhere. And if you go out on the streets, you can get shot by the MPs. So, you know, and then she pulls a curtain around the bed, and I mean, that was what my first time with the bar girl. You know?
So you're actually in the same room as her family, just except with a curtain around the bed?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
That's enough to give you performance anxiety.
And I mean, it happens to everybody, even the married guys. A lot of guys that say, oh, you know, there's no way I'm going to sleep with somebody with my wife home. But there was a funny story. This guy went home and he come back, he had VD. And he never slept with any of the girls, only his wife. So he got it off his wife. So you know, those sort of stories go around. But even some of the married guys. But you know, like if you got a regular girl and she was always there and you never got any disease, 9 out of 10 times you'd go back, you know. But I mean, it's just part of the. It was those 2 days out of a life where you know, every 24 hours of the day you're kind of on call. And those 2 days are the 2 days where you can let your hair down and you can go and get drunk, and because you're young, you can do those sort of things. But sometimes when you look back, you think, you know, there's no way, like morally and all those other things. Like I say, I never drank before I went, but I used to get drunk. You know,
Well, so when you went on those little 2-day jaunts, what would you be drinking? Beer or something else?
Oh, beer, yeah.
And you took into it pretty big?
Yeah. Usually, I used to try and pace yourself. You always had a couple before you left, and then you went into town, because it was cheaper to get drunk on the base than go in, because the beer was nothing. And even in, like if you went, like beer was like 15 cents a can if you drank at one of the bases. If you go into town, it's a little bit more. But see, another thing too was the currency. You had while you're in the military system, was what they call MPC, which is military payment certificates, and it was, you got like paper notes, and like for probably like $1 or whatever, and smokes were like 10 cents a packet, beer was like 15 cents a packet, and I mean, you can drink and smoke yourself stupid. But I mean, you know, when you look at the like the wages that you got then is a lot different to what people are making today, you know. But it was quite cheap.
And what about the girls? What sort of costs would they be?
Anything from $10 to $30 or $40 a night. But then you got different types of girls. If you got like a Eurasian girl, because you've got to realise the French were there before us, and then you get young girls that have a French father and Vietnamese. Some of them are really attractive, and their prices were a little bit more than the average, you know, the average girl. There was one time I went into this place for a massage, and I ended up with more than a massage, and then I lost my dog tags, and the only way I could find them was retrace my steps. And when I got back to this massage parlour, this little girl that gave me such a good time, she grabbed me and she had me dog tags, and I ended up going with her for the rest of the night. I mean, that sort of thing that happened, you know, but like I say, you know, when you're young and you're in that situation, even the soldiers in the Middle East and places in Europe, there was always those sort of women to service the men. But
What sort of, were you warned about disease issues?
oh yeah. I mean, guys used to always talk about the black rose, which was supposed to be if you got this type of VD, it was a death sentence, probably like AIDS. But, you know, that sort of thing. And I mean, there was condoms around then, but, you know. But believe it or not, there was only a small majority of guys that were on our gun that ever got it, you know.
So condoms were made available to you?
Oh, yeah. But you find, like I say, the reason you go back with a certain girl is because she's clean, because usually you can tell, like they shower. It used to be funny that this girl used to have a big vat of water. So every time you finished, you went out there and she'd be washing you down, and you go back in, and probably halfway through the night you're back out there, and that sort of thing. But there was this girl, one of my mates hooked up with her sister, but it was like her mother and father were there. Like the next morning they had fish and rice, and there's no communication in, you know. And then, you know, because she treated you well, if you go back to her, you might take a perfume or something like that, you know, and she kind of regards you as her every time you go. But one time I went there, she was with one of her other regulars, and yeah, that was. So
you'd sometimes give the girls presents as well as just straight cash if they were.
Oh yeah, I suppose. I mean, it was just a physical thing, and I mean, to me, east is east, the west is west, and you know, probably the language barrier and all that sort of thing. I mean, there's, you know, sometimes you think, would I have married one of those sort of girls? And you think, no, there's too much of a gap in between, you know. And my nickname in Vietnam was Killer.
How'd you get that?
Well, everybody found out I was a wrestler, and the only thing that they could relate to wrestling was Killer Kowalski, who was a professional wrestling. So that's how I got my nickname Killer. And even to this day, guys that I know from Vietnam, they still call me Killer. That's my nickname. So he said, "Hey, Killer, can you lend us $10? And I was drunk and he was drunk, and I said, "Yeah, here." And then when I get back to the Horseshoe, a couple of weeks later, he rolls up in his APC, and he gone to 106 and he said, "Where's Killer?" And they said, "He's down on Delta, going down the front." Drives his APC down there. He said, "Killer, here's that $10 I owe you." And it was funny because after Vietnam, a couple of years later, he worked in a bank as a teller. And I've met up with him, and he was telling me that since after I saw him at the Horseshoe, he ran over a mine and he ended up in hospital and still got the scars and stuff today.
So taking you back from Hong Kong, you went back to Vietnam. You had some incidences on the rubber plantations where you were working with the American Army. Can you tell us about what happened then?
It was mainly because they weren't too far from us. The only problem with them is we didn't. I found the Americans, like being of an Aboriginal background, like I try to talk to some Negroes, and because of that stigma they got in their own army, it's like they weren't very conversational, if you know what I mean.
Is that because you were trying to speak to them because you thought that they were black and you were black, and
yeah,
you might have something in common?
It's just Aussie type of thing, we talk to everybody. Probably because of you see a lot of movies with the class discrimination in the American forces, especially World War II, where they weren't allowed to fight. But see, you had all that black power and that sort of thing back in them days, and you get a lot of those soldiers that were there were probably conscripts that didn't want to be there, like us. And I mean, it was hard to make friends with Americans.
What about the white Americans? Were they more friendly to you, or?
I didn't have much to do with them. I mean, it's apparently on one of our leaves down in Vung Tau, I was supposed to have got drunk and we started a fight with some Americans.
What about?
I don't know. Like my mate said, I didn't know what I was doing, and he was there, and the only we started with some white American soldiers, and it was Negro soldiers that stepped in to help us. And then the MPs come, and but I mean. Like I say, I used to there's sometimes you write yourself off, you drank too much.
Was there many fights between the Aussie soldiers and the Americans in Vung?
No, not really, because most of the guys, would be doing their own thing, and we're only after one or two things, alcohol and women, And one of my mates got busted for smoking marijuana, but he just bought a packet of smokes off the side of the street. But see, some of the smokes were funny smokes, and somehow he'd got the wrong packet, and the MPs come and they smelt the marijuana and they hauled him in. I mean, that's a court martial.
Is that what happened to him?
Oh, he got out of it. He was just pleaded innocence, And there was another mate of mine. So I only did 8 months because the unit I went with, they were in country 4 months before I got there. But when they come home, I had the option of staying to do the full 12, but I wanted to get back and do a bit of training to, try the next Olympics. So I came home with them, but one of my mates that stayed on, he went AWOL in Vung Tau. And when they caught him, he was there cleaning the backyard with toothbrushes, and they had him doing all these funny jobs. But he went a little bit off the rails, and he went an AWOL.
Well, taking you back to Vietnam, is there anything else that happened there of significance that you can remember?
Well, like I say, with the artillery boys, a lot of it was like day in, day out, monotonous. one day was no different. The only days that were different, when I went to Bridget, that was good because it was like a bit of a vacation, but we were firing the guns all the time over there. And because when we went out to that plantation, not long after we got back, we got sent to Bridget. And see, when you're moving, there's a lot of work goes into it. So you bust your gut, loading everything on, and then you've got to unload and then reload. And by the time we got back to Horseshoe, we were like, zonked out. And then we had a fire mission, and the bombardier read one of the instructions wrong, and we put one extra charge in there or something. There was just a little mistake. He ended up, he lost a stripe over it. You can't afford that sort of thing.
Did you ever, what did you think of the American soldiers that you did soldier with? How did you find them as soldiers?
You hear a lot of stories about them, and when I said we have those H&Is, harass and indiction, now they come up with this concept. They had these little heat detectors, and they were kind of dispersed all around the countryside, and they kind of monitor heat. And then when the alarm would go off, they had a radar set up and everything, and then they'd have a HI on that position. And then they'd go there the next day and they'd find a dead cow or a dead pig. So I mean, they were good. The heat, they were kind of, theoretically they were good, but a lot of times, and there's other times where we've had H&Is, infantry have come across craters where there's 3 or 4 skeletons from where our bombs landed on these Viet Cong unsuspectedly, So that's what it was all about, to keep the enemy on their toes, because the enemy mainly used to work in the night time. Most of their movements, like all infantry, went out, laid ambushes and stuff like that. But see, you don't, until I went into Commandos, I didn't learn a lot of what was going on with infantry, because the only infantry type training that I had was basic training in Canungra. And in Canungra they try to fit what you might learn in 12 months in an infantry battalion into 4 weeks. And because you're going flat out all the time, it's, I was lucky when I joined the reserves that a lot of the skills that I'd learnt in the as a national serviceman helped me get through the Commandos there.
And what about your downtime when you were at Horseshoe? What would you do when you were relaxing there?
We used to listen to the radio. They used to have the American radio.
What kind of songs would they play?
A lot of country and western, Neil Diamond, that sort of stuff, And used to read magazines and stuff. But, the day was kind of taken up with, maintenance on the gun. Then stores would come in. So virtually there was things that you were doing all day, and then even halfway through unpacking ammunition, you might have a fire mission. So, it's like bang, bang all the time. And there's nothing worse than, you think I'm going to have a nice sleep, and then Charlie going up the back of you is firing over you. And, so they were lucky. The last gun, so they were staggered. And like any gun that's in front of yours, all the it's like the sonic vibrations travel forward, because the guns have got like a shield on them, and the guns in between. You'll see in one of those pictures there. And so that anything in front of the gun gets all the recoil. So even if you didn't fire the gun the night, you know everybody else did.
So you try to sleep through that?
Yeah, well, a lot of times you couldn't put your ear muffs on because you had to listen for them to call you, you know.
Okay, well, we'll just, I might just take you back to coming home from Vietnam, how you got home.
We flew.
And what were your feelings coming back home?
Oh, it was relief. But when I come home and then I had a bit of a leave, then I found out I had to go up to Townsville. That was a bit disheartening, you know, because I thought, you know, see a lot of the Nashos that were on my gun, when they left Australia, they were getting out of the army. And here I was coming back, didn't know what was going to happen. And after I had the break in Sydney, so they didn't use aeroplanes like they do today. We had to catch the train. I mean, 2 days in that train trip up to Townsville. And then when I got there, after a few weeks, probably maybe a month, I was told that they were putting me on a physical training instructor's course in Manly. I thought, oh, you beaut. So there was about probably 3 or 4 months there.
And you had to stay in the army till at what point? You weren't able to discharge?
I went in September '69 and I got out September '71.
So was there a certain period that you had to do 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the PT instructing course is what you always wanted to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I found, so I'm a one sport person. I do like cardio, physical stuff. But when you got to know the rules of basketball, how to play cricket, run athletics, and all that. And after coming back from Vietnam, we had a few guys that used to like having a few drinks. And my aim of getting to Sydney was so that I can go back and do a bit of wrestling training and train for the '72 Olympics. But the whole time I was in Sydney, the 3 or 4 months, I didn't go to one wrestling club because every day you'd be doing so much PT, and it's like what we did in recruit training, but you imagine instead of doing one class, you do like 6 or 7 classes of PT, the same thing day in, day out. Then you're playing basketball and have cricket and football, and there was a whole, and leaving school at 14, there was a lot of like physiology and all that sort of thing. And that's why I joined the Army Reserves, because I got such a roasting from the OC because I failed the course, being an Olympian. It kind of, being an elite athlete, I didn't want to ever be a failure and then have some whacker telling me that I was a failure. That wasn't enough. So I had the last laugh was when I got selected to go to the Olympics. The bastards failed me, so I thought, oh, well, here I am, I come 8th in the world with about 5 months training, you know, so I proved them, but I had to prove that I wasn't a failure in the Army, so that's why I joined the Army Reserves.
That was later on?
Later on, yeah.
So you didn't that PT course, you didn't end up passing that?
No.
Okay, and that was because of the academic side of it?
Oh, the academic, but as far as the physical side was, I was probably the fittest, like cardio-wise. My repetitions for circuits and was far in excess of other people. but I'm not a strong swimmer, and there was a swimming component of that. So it's like you're going into like a medley race. There's some things you're good at and some things you're not, and then when it all evens out, you know. But see, it all boiled down to the fact that I just wanted to be back in Sydney. I only had a few months to get out of the army.
So tell us how you end up eventually leaving.
Yeah, well, when I got back to Townsville, I got over my years of being an athlete, I had these tonsillitis attacks. I got tonsillitis very bad, and they ended up putting me in, and the doctor said, see, at 23, they said, oh, your tonsils got to come out, which is, for an adult, it's not very nice, you know. And back in the 70s, when they took them out, it started bleeding, and then all I remember is I had my mouth open and they were putting bread in there to soak up the blood, and it was really horrific, you know. It's something that I, you know, like I was saying, all these things that happened to me leading up to being selected in Munich, and that was, it's like as soon as I get up, I fall down, I get up and fall down. So tonsillitis, the failure of the PT course, then going back there and getting me butt kicked from the OC, and then getting tonsillitis, and then getting out of the army, 2 weeks out of the army, no medical cover, appendicitis, appendix out, and then just prior to I was wrestling with somebody a bit heavier than me, and my arm hit the deck and my elbow got dislocated. And then I had to get rushed to the hospital, and then I couldn't do much training. And you get all these Olympians at 4 years training leading up to the Olympics, and here's me with about 5 months.
So tell us how you were selected. Who picked you out, and how did that happen?
Well, it's a process. They have state championships, and then they have Australian championships, and then the winner of the Australian champions. So there's 10 divisions, and what they do is, in the 2 Olympics that I went to, they sent 3 wrestlers. So out of 10 wrestlers, they've got to pick the 3 of the best. So twice I've been the best of the best. But in Montreal, it was a political thing. I come 8th in Munich. I didn't even, they nominated me number 5.
Yeah. All right. So,
Yeah.
But we'll just take you back to how you got. So you won the Australian competitions, and you won enough to be selected for the Olympics. That was a natural process back then.
Yeah.
And who were you Who was training you at that stage to prepare for Munich?
Well, there was a guy, because my coach from Mexico. See, after I left the army, my coach, he was kind of, like those couple of years I'd been away, he kind of started to fall out of the wrestling. So I had to go elsewhere, mainly to get wrestling partners. And I started wrestling at Bankstown, and then I had another guy, he was 2 times Olympian, and he won a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games, Jeff Jamison. And he kind of gave me a lot of coaching, because he used to coach at Glebe, and when I used to live at Balmain, I used to come over to Glebe, so I used to get coaching of him on Monday, and there was a couple of brothers used to be coaches at Bankstown. I used to go over there Tuesday and Thursday, and then I used to do all my other training in the gym and doing a lot of circuits and training, and often going around to other clubs.
And did you always have the Olympics in mind at that stage? Is that what you in your mind were training for?
Well, Mexico, like I'd already been there. But see, when I come back, I got married.
How was that?
Well, it was like unexpected, because my girlfriend Yvonne, that I'd known since she was about 10, she fell pregnant, and then it was like, we got married, and my eldest daughter, she's 30 odd now, yeah. So I mean, it was, and my mother got a bit upset because I didn't tell her that my wife, and that kind of created a bit of friction because I was so embarrassed to tell my mother because I thought, she, I think that's the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, that I didn't tell my mother that my girlfriend was pregnant. And
She didn't like Yvonne?
oh, no. Like I say, we were close family, and I think it's just that I'd never told her. I just kind of, I think I was. See, my mother, when I went to Vietnam, like being a Queen Scout, and she's got me on this pedestal, and after Vietnam, even she tells everybody, used to say how much I'd changed. And like I didn't want to think I was this sort of, it's like when you do something good all your life and you
didn't want her to be disappointed in you.
Yeah, well, I didn't know how to take it. See, people face failure in different ways. And sometimes you think you fail yourself. I suppose what's happened to me now is I'm still seeing psychiatrists because being such an elite athlete or try to be a winner all your life, and then when you hit the wall, it's good to have the support from family and things, but it's just that you don't. You think you're bomb-proof, but you're not.
So you mentioned that your mother thought you'd changed when you come back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
In what way had you changed? What were people saying?
Oh, well, because I was always shy and respectful and all that, I think it was just certain mannerisms, that sort of thing, I mean, when somebody, you can, like tell somebody's changed, you got to there's a lot of things that I didn't do. And when you come back and you're doing all those other things...
like drinking and smoking and...
Yeah. But with the smoking, I mean, that's something I used to only smoke when I used to drink. And then when things got too far for me down the track... but I was only ever used to smoke in the garage or whatever.
And how would people, other people like your friends and family or the Australian public, once they knew that you come back from Vietnam, did you have any bad experiences with people saying, "Why did you go over there?" And you shouldn't have gone?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of. I was too ashamed to tell people I'd been to Vietnam because of a lot of the publicity with. My Lai massacre and some of the, mainly from a lot of things that the Americans had inflicted on the people, and those sort of atrocities filter back to being a soldier over there, And like I was telling you when I went to that Russian theatre, to have somebody kind of. I mean, see, people that were anti-communist back in them days, they were real radicals, And when you look at it, if you read the history of Ho Chi Minh, all he wanted was a united Vietnam. I mean, the Americans trained him in jungle warfare, and he come back and kicked the French out. And then when he wanted to have one Vietnam because he was pro-Russian, the the Americans wouldn't have nothing to do with him, you know. And they're the ones that help him kick the Japs out.
So you understood why the protesters were hurling abuse at soldiers back in Sydney, or did it upset you?
I think a lot of that was probably with the Afghanistan thing too, you know, because not long after Vietnam, Russia went into Afghanistan, and then then you had the American support and the Taliban. So every conflict that you look at that America supported Saddam Hussein when they were fighting the Iranians, I mean, America creates their own problems.
But for you personally, coming back from Vietnam, what was your personal experience of how people treated you because you'd been over there?
Unless you said you went to Vietnam, like I was saying, it's like the Olympics today. The Olympics in my day was, you know, I'm an Olympian. Oh, that's all right. But if you say you're an Olympian today, you're like a big superstar. You look at all the people that were at the airport. You know, I mean, sport's come a long way. But see, like Vietnam in them days, it's like sailors that come back from Afghanistan. It's like, you know, some of the personnel, the ships that come back from Iraq, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people down there to welcome them, everything. But see, it's only because of the media hyping it all up. But see, back in my day, there was so much negativity that there was no hype for us. And that's why it took us years and years before when they had that Welcome Home parade. That was the only thing that made veterans of kind of, I shouldn't say proud, but, you know, we went over there because the government sent us. So in a way, it was for our country, you know. Going over there because we shouldn't have, it's a different sort of, you know, no, that's politics. It's like the, you know, people who didn't want them to go to Iraq. But see, now people are saying we've got to support them, whereas with us, I mean, even they went on strike with the Chaparrot and we couldn't get supplies over there. I mean, it wouldn't happen today. That sort of thing wouldn't happen today. But see, back in them days, things were totally, not only the Olympics, but the wars.
John, I just wanted to clear something up first. I think you said at one point that when you were in Vung Tau, you'd been in hospital?
Yeah, they used to come around for medical inspections, like spot inspections on your feet and your body. Because over there, because of the hot temperature, people used to get funguses growing on them. And I had some fungus growing on my feet, and then they had to send me down to Vung Tau to have a little minor operation. And yeah, so I was in Vung Tau for a little while. And yeah, that was the only time.
How good was the hygiene up at the fire base, by the way?
Oh, it was pretty good. You know, like, I mean, they were fortunate to have a tank there so you can have a proper shower. You turn the tap on, you can have, I mean, you weren't allowed to stay under there all day, but you can have a quick shower. Whereas when we're in Bridget, they had the little canvas bags. You got a jerry can, filled it up with water and pulled it up and then opened. Yeah, that was our shower facilities over in Bridget. So, you know, different standards. But there was always, everybody had to have a tub every day. You know?
Oh, that was the rules, was it?
Yeah.
So you had to have a wash of
hygiene, yeah.
And I also meant to ask what the food was like up there in Vietnam.
Well, it wasn't too bad. When we went out bush that time, we had like a 10-man ration pack, and like you had to do all your own cooking. But in Bridget, you had ration packs for breakfast and lunch, and for dinner they used to bring a helicopter over with hot boxes. So everybody used to have a hot meal every night. So but the food in they had the catering corps there, and they did all the. I mean, it was just basic sort of food. I used to get a lot of American rations, but sometimes it wasn't too crash hot. No. But you had your 2 Dixies, because sometimes you get a dessert. So they used to fill one Dixie up with food, and then you might have peaches or something, So that then you had to wash them. You had to wash them all yourself. And all they were was just board type tables and stools. It's real. It was just a way of keeping out of the weather, and the cooks had somewhere to cook, because they used to cater for quite a few guys. But what they did was quite good for what they had.
You didn't have any complaints about it, obviously.
No.
Did you look forward to the letters from home and from Yvonne?
Oh, yeah. It was always good to know something was going on. I think the hardest thing for me was the Commonwealth Games team from Edinburgh. Arthur Tunstall brought a boxing team to Vietnam, and he brought out to Nui Dat, and they had a few, put on a little bit of a display, and some of the athletic guys got in and had a few rounds with them, mostly SAS guys, but Arthur actually came out to the Nui Dat, because when he got to Vung Tau, he specifically asked for me, and he'd come out to Nui Dat, and they brought me specially in from the Horseshoe, and then he had a movie camera, and he took some shots of me, and then when he went home, he had them developed, and he went around and showed me wife and family. Me mum and that, So, but because I was in Vietnam, I missed selection for the Edinburgh Commonwealth Games. I never went to a Commonwealth Games, so I only went to the Olympics. Because in between I was indisposed.
So how did you feel about missing the chance to go to the Commonwealth Games?
Well, Mum sent me all the, all the cuttings out from the finals and stuff, and I was a bit disappointed, because in a way I had a chance of going, because the trials were, when I went to Canungra, the trials were that weekend after Canungra, and this is where I asked one of the officers, I said, listen, because they had guys that were in Brisbane, and they had transport back to Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, and I said, I didn't know who to get permission off to go to stay in Brisbane and compete in the... So if I would have got selected for the Games, I would have pulled out going to Vietnam. But because, 4 weeks out in the bush, not being on a wrestling mat, not knowing how much you're going to weigh, not having any equipment or gear, I just kind of dismissed it, and, probably meant not to happen. Yeah.
But you had that contact with the Commonwealth Games team when they came and visited you in...
Oh, yeah, it was great, yeah. Well, seeing Arthur Tunstall, I've been involved with Arthur Tunstall since Mexico '68. And he's virtually been to almost every Olympics as a boxing manager. He was even, I think I saw him in Sydney. He was involved with the boxing there. So he's always been a high official in the boxing team over the years. And he was actually insurance broker. So anybody on the Olympic team that was new in the team, that's how I got to know him closely, because after the Mexico Olympics he said, "John, I'm coming around your house, come round to sign me up with insurance," and I've known him ever since.
You said that, Vietnam had changed you and it's given you some problems later in life. What aspect of the Vietnam experience do you think was the most stressing for you?
Well, there's a lot of things it affects different people in different ways, but I think, and then you've got to take into account, so you hear so much about that Agent Orange, and with all these guys with anxiety disorders or things to do with the nervous system, you wonder how much the chemical type of, the chemicals they used in Vietnam affects the veterans all these years, And, being an elite athlete and then you're getting all these anxiety problems, you wonder what's happened, I suppose that's a lot of the reason. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it. It's hard to put the blame on, hitting the bottle all the time, and it's only that now that I get a lot of help from Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service that they've put my life into perspective. I'm starting to do fitness course with the Diabetics Australia. I see a psychiatrist every month. I see a counsellor with the Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service. So, it helps you get you back on track, mainly with the alcohol. If a lot of people weren't rescued by some of these organisations, you look at the Ravelli on any RSL newspaper, Vietnam veterans dead age 56, 57, all under 60, Yet you see World War I digger 105, a lot of World War II diggers still alive in their 80s. You don't hear too much of Vietnam veterans living to more than 70,
So you can't really put your finger on what you think about the experience that affected you?
Well, I didn't see a lot of traumatic things as much as what, like infantry, but then, there's always those other things there, like war affects people in different ways. You see dead bodies, that sort of thing.
When you were firing the guns, for example, did you ever think about who it was landing on?
Well, it would only affect you if you see the end results. But, that'd only ever happen if you went out and investigated every bomb you dropped. So, and when you hear reports about infantry come across some dead bodies discovered around a crater, you're in a war zone, they're the enemy, So you get desensitised to war, and, it's kill or be killed. That's like a lot of the stigma of being a soldier, you know. Doesn't matter if you look at some of the battles that the real battles that they fought in Vietnam, the end results tell the tale. Everybody works as a team, and that's why we're so successful in the end result, you know. It's that teamwork, you know. And it's, some people are in the wrong spot at the wrong time. That's life.
How did you get on with the infantry blokes when you were in Vietnam?
I really only met one of them on my R&R. He was with 2 Battalion, and he spent $600 on nothing, because I went over with him and I came home with him, and I said, oh, how'd you go? Because we were in different hotels, and he said, oh, I spent $600. He had nothing to show, just women, drink, and having a good time. A lot of people went to Hong Kong to buy the discounts, you know. If you wanted sex and fun, you went to Bangkok. Taiwan, you had the option to go to Taiwan. But a lot of my friends all went to Hong Kong. I know some people, my brother came home, but I thought, well, I'll be spending the rest of my life home, so I might as well see something different.
So was it just that you never really had any contact with the infantry while you were in Vietnam because they were operating well forward?
Yeah, that's right. It was like we used to all eat in the same mess. Like they had messes at different, like there's different companies, and so I don't even know what company was out there. It's just that because you don't really know anybody, and they've got their own shit to worry about, you know. Yeah.
And do you reckon the infantry blokes ever bagged you guys out because you were back behind the wire and they were out in the sticks?
No, I don't think that sort of thing went on over there, because there's a lot of FOs that work with infantry. It was only because of their accuracy that got them out of a lot of the shit, you know. But see, that sort of stigma, you know, Australian soldiers, I suppose a lot of the they'd call us pogos, being in a support base, not going out. But we were a little, because we were kind of in our own little action, same as APCs, you know, they got their own little action. You know, infantry would have to be the most respected, or he's the sort of soldier that everybody really respects. We might call them grunts, but deep down everybody respects them, because they're the ones out there doing all the hard yakka. And, you know, I mean, that's why I joined the Army Reserves. I just wanted to see what I missed, you know. But you can't duplicate what happens over there unless it's the real thing.
All right, we'll talk about Munich a bit now. You got selected for the team to go over to Munich. Tell us about the arrival over there.
Well, I'll tell you so. Just prior to us going to Munich, we had a Pakistani gold medalist from the Commonwealth Games, and they nominated him as a coach, and he trained us for a couple of weeks in Melbourne. In Melbourne. So, what you got to realise now, since I got out of the army, I work for myself, and I've had a wife and a little girl. We were living with Mum, so there was no such thing as the dole. So if I had any time off, we didn't have money coming in. So that couple of weeks down there, and then the 7 weeks in Munich, I mean, that was 7 weeks without pay. I mean, see, a lot of athletes get sponsored now. But we spent 1 week in Melbourne and 1 week at the Cerberus Navy Depot, and the PDIs here let us use their gym. They had mats down for us, so we'd do wrestling training in the morning, afternoon, and during the daytime we'd have the Navy PDIs put us through all these exercises and things like that. And by the time the 1 week was up, we were really fit. And then we caught a aeroplane. They flew us from Sydney to Melbourne, and then from Melbourne, we went via Darwin over to Munich. And then we lobbed in Munich. Now, when you're in Europe during that time of the year, nobody ever told me that the sun comes up about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, or 3 o'clock. And I didn't have a clock, I didn't have a watch. And I used to always get up when the sun came up. And I used to get up and I'd go running. I used to go running for a few Ks. And then I'd come back and everybody's still sleeping. And then I'd be making noise. And then the manager said, he said, "Why you get up so early?" I said, "Oh, it's only about 5 or 6 o'clock." Turned out I was getting up like 3 o'clock in the morning because the sun was still up, you know. And so he gave me a watch so that when I got up in the morning, I looked at the watch and thought, "Oh, it's too early to go training."
And what was your final ranking in the competition?
8th. And then we started on day 1. We finished on day 4. And I've actually got a cutting from the newspaper. Our only winner for that day, when all the competition started, I had my first win on that day, and it had John Kinsela, our only winner for the day. So I've got that. I should have bought it. So that's kind of there. But when I finished competing, you kind of let your hair down, and I had a few drinks with some friends. See, in Germany, the Germans were very, arrogant sort of, especially the Bavarians, and like if you didn't speak proper English, they couldn't understand. Like if we spoke Aussie slang, they couldn't understand us. They could speak perfect English, so we had to, if we wanted to talk to them, we had to slow our talking down so that they can understand us. But it's.
Well, tell us about that fateful night in Munich.
Yeah, well, what happened was I had a few drinks with some of the people there, and see, like I just lost my train of thought there. But see, what the Germans did, they imported all their volunteers and workers. It's like Australia, we had the best volunteers, but see, every Olympics. They get the people to do more and more work, but in Germany, all the workers were all foreigners. There was hardly any German there because they let, like the Turks used to do all their menial sort of work. So they sent out all these circulars, and all these people from universities come there, and because they're really fantastic people. We used to kind of have little conversations with them, and we were actually drinking, and then all of a sudden the AK-47s went off, and I thought, you know, because in '70 I was in Vietnam, and you heard the odd AK-47 go off, and I thought, my God, this sounded like a gun. And I said, no, this is the Olympics. This is not Vietnam, because I kind of, you kind of shake your head, and so I, next day I wake up.
So on that particular night, you didn't take any further action? You just...
No, I just went back. Like, I just thought it was fireworks. There was, like somebody had let off some firecrackers or something. And then, so I went to bed. I mean, there was nothing.
no sirens?
No security or nothing.
No evacuation alarm?
No. And then the next day, the wrestling manager said, oh, listen, there's been a disaster happened in the village, and then he was telling us about the Israelis, and then, I mean, the day after I competed, the game shut, which is, for the games to be closed for a day, that puts a lot of people out of, see, people psych themselves up, and, when that train of thoughts, it's like that Brazilian runner, his train of thought was, he was taken out, and this is, imagine losing a day where you're all psyched up and you got your weight right, and that sort of thing.
So what were you told had happened?
We were told that there were terrorists, because in them days there was a lot of terrorist stuff going on with like the Irish and the Arabs, and I mean, we thought it was only just happened over there in the Middle East or in Ireland, and to have that happen in the Olympics, which was supposed to bring everybody together, it completely shocked me, because after that I gave up wrestling for 2 years. I thought, well, if this is what I've been to a war, if this is what they think of the biggest sporting event in the world, which brings everybody together, what's the world coming to,
Because a couple of the Israeli wrestlers were killed in that
Yeah,
attack,
well,
or Israeli wrestling team members.
Yeah, that's right. Because my manager was Dick Garrard, and he won a silver medal in London '48 Olympics, and he was he went to 4 Olympics, and he was actually good friends with the Jewish wrestling coach. Knew him personally, for years. And I think he actually wrestled him in his younger days. And when you're in international competition for that many years, you soon learn a lot of friends. And when he said the coach had died and some of the other wrestlers, you think, that could have happened to us, I mean, imagine what happened in us going to Afghanistan, and they took it out on the Aussie athletes, and that sort of thing could happen.
And because it was particularly some wrestlers who'd been hurt, do you think that affected you?
Oh
more?
yeah. Well, I just probably. Because I was a bit shattered after Munich, because I thought, I mean, you look like I went to 1 Olympics, I fought in a war, and I went to represent the country again, and I got the best placing that I could get, and then all this happens, and then I thought, well, and then there's a lot of publicity about because my wife got a bit furious because my scoutmaster let the press know that, you know, us not being too good off, you know, because of money-wise.
So there was a combination of
Of
factors.
a whole lot of things, you know, so I think when I got back I just thought, well, there's no way I'm going to let my family go through all that again. And then there was a combination of that with what happened in the sport, and yeah, I mean, 74 I was talked out of coming back, you know, coming back. And then I actually won selection to go to Montreal, and then the politics come into it, and that's when I dropped out. But see, I never really dropped out because I carried on coaching, so I carried on the, you know, see the sports will die unless you get people to coach, and wrestling's dying at the moment because there's a lot of people that have represented in the Olympics that haven't bothered to put any time back into the sport, you know, and if you get people, you know, I mean the government pay them, sponsor them to go to these games, people put a lot of money out and then they give up the sport, you know. I mean, it's the future of things, isn't it? That's why the Olympics is getting bigger, is because it's the youth that are putting things, it's the people from the sports that are putting it back into the sport that make it bigger. And
So what was it that made you join the Army again, the Army Reserve?
well, like there was a big ad on the TV because they started to, they wanted to build the reserves up again, and there was a display from the Commandos. And anyway, I rang up and I said, I rang up the recruiting office. Being a courier, I could drive around. And I rang up the recruiting office and I said, what's the qualifications to get in the Commandos? And they said, you fit? I said, yeah. And they said, we've got a recruitment thing on such and such a day, come over. So I went over there, and one of the young guys I coached, I talked him into coming because he was living with my sister at that time, and you had to do so many push-ups, chin-ups, 2K run, and then you had to do a swim in the pool, and then when you passed that, they said, every Tuesday night, and that's when we got uniforms and all that sort of stuff. But what happened was, because I'd already done 2 years, I knew how to march. They said, you don't have to go to recruit training. All the other boys had to go and do 2 weeks straight, or what we did for 3 months, they only do about 2 weeks out at Bardia Barracks. It's only the basic principles. But now if you join the Ready Reserves, you have to do the basic 3 months type thing. You have to do exactly what everybody else does. And if you go and join the Commandos, you have to do the same selection course for SAS as you do for Commandos. You know, it's things have changed. You know.
So you got straight into you missed having to do the actual training
As a recruit.
as a recruit.
But I had to do IET training, which is Infantry Elementary Tactics. And even like there was a guy, Harry Whiteside, he was SAS, he still had to do the same training. And I mean, all those years he spent in the army, you know, he still had to do all that, you know, because there were tests that you had to do on the way. And, I mean, everybody, it's like your Green Beret qualification. And then after 12 months, when you pass all these physical tests, you get your green beret.
Can you list some of the physical tests you had to do to get the
Well,
green
the
beret?
hardest one for me was they had a rope suspended across the hall, and it was about over 10 foot high, and you had a SLR on a sling over your shoulder, and you had your basic webbing with water bottles and everything filled. You had to crawl across the top of the rope, and then you had to drop down at arm's length, and then you had to do a regain. And so you had to pull yourself up, put your leg up, then you had to pull yourself back up on the rope, and then you had to pull yourself over the other side. But the disadvantage I had was because I've only got short legs, I didn't. I'd get back up on the top, and because my legs weren't long enough to give me that extra, balance, I'd keep rolling. I'd roll over, and I must have had about 5 or 6 attempts at that. And you only have to do it once. And the other one was that a rope, and you had to climb up to the roof and down using your hands and your boots. They were two of the the physical type ones, and then you had to do a swim. You had to run 2 Ks with gear, so many minutes, and it's the same with SAS as Commandos. You had to do a 9-mile run and a 20-mile run. So your 20-miler, and then you had things like map reading, and then weapons. You had to load all the basic infantry things. And then when you got your green beret, then you can apply for parachute training. Every commander had to be parachute qualified.
Was that scary?
What they do is the first day one, you jump out of the back of an aeroplane without any. The only training they give you is how to release your parachute, because what they do is they drop you into water. So when you jump off the back, the parachute deploys, and then you land just before you get the water. You release your parachute, so you don't see the basics of parachuting is exiting, what happens mid-flight, and how you land. So what they do is, the reason they give you the jump day one is anybody that balks at the door, they're scared of heights, because all the other training involves heights. Like when they teach you how to exit the plane, they teach you how to exit the back of like C-130s, which are Hercules, Caribous, Chinooks, and then you do double door exits out of C-130s, which is, so C-130's got side doors, or you can go out the back. So the good thing about side door is you can get 2 parachutists out there at one time, without the back there's only one. And a lot of that's to do with, they teach you how to, use your cape wheels. When the simulation for exiting the aircraft is they've got a flying fox, so they teach you how to jump off. And when you land, they've got what they call a Polish tower, but it wasn't working when we were there, so we used like they call a fan tower, and what that is it's like a big fan inside a cylinder, and the heavier you are, the faster it goes. So therefore, it doesn't matter how heavy you are, everybody comes down exactly the same speed, because you know what I mean. But this, there was this Maltese guy, and he was actually scared of heights, but he was bunched in the middle of all those guys and they just kept pushing him off, bang, bang, bang. And he was that terrified that they were going to kick him off the course because he used to hesitate at the all these different things.
What's the Carter course exactly?
The Carter course is it's a course that it's what they call a selection course to get into SAS, and you have to. It's so many weeks, and what they do is they put you through different. There's different things that they mark you on. There's like psychology, your physical, your map reading, bush skills. There's different components, and there's they mark you on different levels, and because of this little graph, I actually got hold of one of the graphs, and so I was in the recruit platoon, and I was teaching recruits, so we were kind of given this type of stuff to work on our people. So that, I mean, you can be the fittest guy, but psychologically, some people have thresholds. And SAS look for people that can go beyond the threshold, like pain barriers and things like that.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Like they might take you for a 10k run, and they say, oh, there's a truck at the other end. And when you get to the 10k, there's no truck there. They say, oh, get back to base, be back there in such and such a time. A lot of people that are athletes, they psych themselves up for that 10k, put everything into it. When they get there, they're completely shattered. But you get those people that got that mental toughness, they can go that extra inch, and it's like a certain breed of person. It's somebody that's a natural that doesn't have to train, because he's just got it's that mental thing. You know what I mean? I
know exactly what you. And did you do the Carter course yourself?
No, well, I did. I went to. I only went to Commandos, but so in 1983 I was nominated Commando of the Year, which was, you got all these people from all different walks of life, barristers, solicitors, police, officers, and to be named Commando of the Year was for somebody who left school at 14. It was like I achieved what I failed as a nasho, and that's what I had to prove to myself and then I actually said to one of the Carter staff, I said, I want to go and do the Carter course. And at that time I was in my 30s, and he said, oh, John, he said, how many kids you got? I said, I've got 3. He said, oh, you want to go home and think about it, it's you spend 6 months away from the family, and as much as I thought about it, I said, no, family comes first, and that's the way it's always been.
Would they have accepted you at the age 30 plus?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of mature, probably because of my background too. But there was a guy from one Commando Company. He was in close to his 40s, and he passed the Carter course. And they said, "Listen, what can we teach you?" So he was an ex-paratrooper from Great Britain, and I think it was just the prestige of being in SAS. But at that age, so when you're young and you're about 19 or 20, there's a lot of things that they, sometimes it's a bit old to teach older people, especially specialist skills. But I was lucky because I picked, when I really, for demolitions I got 100%. For small craft handling I got 96%. I've left school at 14. Mathematics, I had to get people to teach me how to do the formulas. But it's like, just practicing, and,
Was there many other Vietnam vets in the
Oh,
Commando
yeah,
course
yeah.
like yourself?
We had two former SAS guys that did tours of with SAS, and we had another guy. He was in the British Paras. He did a tour of Ireland, and we had two British Paras, and then we had we had a lot of policemen, prison warders. We actually had a guy that was a supervisor in Long Bay Jail, and our sergeant in the Commandos was a prison officer under him. So in the jail, he was the boss, and in the reserves, was vice versa, But so you get different walks of all different walks of life in the reserves.
So why did you decide to do the Commando course? You've already been to Vietnam. You knew what real war was like. What really motivated you to sign up with the Commandos in 1978?
It's just something I had to prove to myself, because I thought, like I say, I think that went down in my records, because I think one day I got a unsavoury. I think, see what happens with when I went into Commandos, I had my army records, and it was just a remark I got from one of the OCs when he because I don't know what that that physical training instructor put down for me, but I think he bagged me a bit, and because I failed the course. I mean, they had to do was give me a couple of more points, and I would have been a PDI. But I think I got a bit of ragging from him, and that would have went in the report. And that OC, he was a SAS, and he went to Vietnam. He was an Army Intelligence SAS guy, so he would have got all my intel. And but see, I proved them all wrong. I ended up Commando of the Year. So just something that I have to, I don't let things get me down. What's happened to me now, I'm starting to get on top of that.
So before we'll talk about now in a minute and how that's affected, Vietnam's affected you now. But there was one other incident about a fellow falling off a harbour bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that when you were in the Commandos?
Actually, we had a couple of bad. So I was in the mountaineering section. We used to do all our mountaineering down in Mount Arapiles. They run all the courses down there. In Commandos, all instructors were SAS, and the mountain leaders were from SAS. Most of them had been to the Royal Marine Commandos and did their 9 months course, so they were pretty, good mountaineers. And what happened on this particular day, we were doing, it was almost the last day, it was the third last day of the course, because the last day you do roping off the gap out at Watson's Bay. And so we abseiled down the pylons. We get permission off the council, and so they set up ropes. We abseiled down the pylons, and then this is at North Sydney. So where the under the harbour bridge, they've got walkways, and what we do is we were doing free fall ropes. So what they do is tie a rope to a girder, and then we were kind of, the girder would be about that wide, and then we'd abseil off, do a free fall, if you know what I mean. And then we set up this tension rope off the pylon, and what we were doing was we were doing slides. You put cardboard under your shirts, and you lay on top of the rope, and you have gloves on your hands, and you put your boot over the rope, and you've got one leg down for balance, and what you do is you slide down the rope, and the cardboard stops you from getting burnt. And if you want to slow yourself down, you use your gloves. So virtually, you're on the rope there. If you fall off, you hit the deck. But what this whacker did was he was an officer, and he thought, oh, I'll put a bit of a stunt on, you know. So what he's done is he's got this rope about as thick as this, and it's manila. And manila's got a certain breaking strain. But when you put knots in it, and you put speed and velocity, it reduces the breaking strength. Now what he's done is he's wrapped the rope around his stomach, and he's had it running down the inside of his leg trouser, around his boot, so he's got knots up the top here, and he's got knots down around his boot, and he's connected a carabiner onto that, and he's hooked himself onto the rope. So as he's sliding down on his belly, he pops off, and then all of a sudden he's just dangling on the, you know, because down the bottom they have a couple of brake people there to stop you. So he's come screaming down, and he's probably about 20 metres from the end, and the rope broke. And you can imagine he's upside down, doing about 30 k's, 30, 40 miles. And what he's done is as he's fallen, he's kind of landed on one side of his body, shattered every bone in his body, his arm, chest, leg, and he ended up, he's got a permanent limp now. Went into severe shock, and they didn't have any counselling in them days. And the next day we were off abseiling off the Gap, you know. And, you know, I mean, that's, it's like war, you know, you've got to keep going on, you know, but, and I actually took photograph. I never got the negatives back, so I haven't got any shots of it, you know. But yeah, and then we were down in Mount Arapiles, and we were doing this. A pitch is equal to probably about 40 metres, and there in Mount Arapiles you've got 6 or 7 pitch climbs. And up about the 4th pitch, one of my mates fell off, and he's slammed into the cliff, and he smashed his head. He had a helmet on, but the side of his head it kind of caved in his skull, and then they had to lower him down. And because we were on the left-hand side of him, we had to come across and give assistance, because they had to lower him, and then we, you know, it was a hard process. He ended up with iron pins coming out of his skull. But he ended up going back, and he did the same climb, and he conquered it. You know,
So what do you think it was that you know, that gave you post-traumatic stress syndrome? When did you start to become aware that you might be suffering from PTSD?
Oh, well, you know, it's a lot of things happen to you, and because, you know, you think, so it was only my mates that put me on the Vietnam Veterans, St Mary's.
How long ago did they do that?
They did that in 2001.
Very recently.
Yeah.
So
But see,
it was
mine
much
was.
earlier on that you started to get depressed.
Oh yeah. You know, when I told you I went to public service in 95, 96, I left driving because I felt there was something happening to me, and I couldn't concentrate on the road anymore. So I thought maybe a job change, and then I did 12 months security at the art gallery, and being, you know, like, see, a lot of things carry on with you in your lifetime, and this being, see, people got to realise Aboriginals, we're nomadic people, we've got to be on the move all the time. To being locked in a room, like the boys' home, and then the Horseshoe, and then in the art gallery. So I got a career change, and I went over to the juvenile justice, and then I started locking boys in little rooms. And after 12 months, I got too much, so I went back to driving. Because what was happening, I'd get work 3 days, and then get 3 days off. And that's how it worked, you know. So you work 3 days, get 3 days off, and and those, having all them days off, I got too bored. So one of my mates rang me up, and I said, "Oh, you want to do a bit of part-time driving?" So I went back to part-time driving, and then when I thought, you know, because, you know, with juvenile justice, you got kids in. There was a big fight out at Cobham a little while back. There's a lot of stress there, you know, and you get. While I was in there, 3 of the boys that I had in there, one's up, 2 of them are up for murder. 3 of them are up for murder, and they were only teenagers when they were in Cobham.
Did you find that very confronting because you were an Aboriginal boy yourself and knowing what they may have had to go through to end up there?
We had one guy try to commit suicide. So we put him in one of the rooms with one of the other Aboriginal boys. And then, so when they try to commit suicide, they're on 24-hour watch. They have one person specifically just watching them.
Well, I was just going to ask you, John, how did you start to realise that things were getting on top of you?
Oh, well, a lot of it, like I was drinking more, and I started, I had mood swings. There's a lot of things, like, see what happens with the, being a driver, I'm what you call a binge drinker. I can't afford to lose my licence, so I drink Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I start all over again on Monday, back to... So when you're doing 10 hours a day, and then there's a lot of other baggage you carry in from things in your life, you know, when you reach a certain age, you just can't handle it anymore. And when I was talking to one of my mates on Anzac Day, and I was telling him some of the problems he's having, he said, "Listen, we need to get you to Vietnam Veterans Counselling, Vietnam Veterans St Mary's, and get you to see a psychiatrist." And that's how they got me to see. I started off with Dr. Westrink at St John of God, and then when he left, I got Dr. Schmidtman, and she's really good because, you know, because she was new, and then she was asking me different sort of questions. I found out, see, my anxiety levels were very high, and I said, "Listen," I said, I don't think them tablets are working, because I was talking to some Vietnam veterans, and they were in St John of God because the medication wasn't working, and sometimes you got to get it changed because, you know, things like not sleeping well in the night, loss of concentration, forgetting things, drinking. I gave up smoking when I was in St John of God, but then when I come out, I thought, I'm not like these other blokes, I'm going to get back to work, and so I didn't have a drink, didn't have a smoke, and then my doctor told me to get off the antidepressants, and then when I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to beat this, I got worse. I felt as bad. The reason I went into St John of God is to get myself well, to get back to work. And when they said, oh, get off the antidepressants, I thought, yeah, I'm going to get good. And then Westrink rang and said, so he did make an appointment for me to go back and see him. And he said, I'll give you two months, I'll sign you off for 2 months from work. So I had 2 months to get over it. And then when he rang me, I was worse than when I went. So I was really good when I got out of hospital, because I thought, oh, giving up the drink and the smokes, and then you think with all that positive training that you get, you think you're going to be good. And then things just didn't. I just kind of went backwards. When you start to have like these little panic attacks, and then you start, the ball starts rolling over and over again. When I saw Western, he ended up putting me in a depression thing out at Penrith. I went there for 3 months, and it's only supposed to be for 8 weeks. Every day, what's that, 2 months? I was there like 3 or 4 months. I said, when do I finish this? They said, oh, when you think you get better. And I thought, it's like Groundhog Day, the same thing over, and like coming back to the cycle again. So I thought, that's not working. And then when I got Dr. Schmidtman, and then I told her, she put me on medication, I started to function a bit better. And then I got on the Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service, and I'm just starting to, I'm not really 100%, but I can't survive without the pills, and I'm on a fitness class with Diabetics Australia, so that's going to take care of the fitness side of things, because I'm borderline diabetic, and I've got a counsellor that's helped me control my drinking. I'm almost a teetotaler now.
And you think a lot of this is due to your military service?
Yeah, well, when you talk to all the other vets, exactly the same thing. And, it's... you wonder... there's a lot of guys suffer really bad PTSD because, they saw a lot of horrific things, but then you get all the other Vietnam veterans that they still all suffer from post-traumatic anxiety disorder, and they're all on pills. So there must be something upset in the system, or there's got to be something that caused it, when you look at what happened to all them vets after the Gulf, there's a lot of them committed suicide, and there's...
So you notice similar symptoms or similar stories amongst your fellow Vietnam veterans?
Yeah. And then you read like Ravalli and things like that, and you read about the desalination plants on the ships that were affected by the Agent Orange in the water. There's been a lot of sailors that have died prematurely before they reach 60, and they're Vietnam veterans. So, you know, you're talking about chemicals. It's a combination of a whole heap of things.
How did your conditions affect your family life?
Well, I must admit I'm quite drunk, so I don't get abusive or want to fight people. But you know, it's I can't stand to be. If I'm watching TV, I've got to have everybody quiet, or I've got to turn it up, or I've got to go and sit in a room on my own, because people, I can't concentrate on too many things going on. If there's a heap of people come to my room, I go in the bedroom, you know. I just can't concentrate on too many things going on, you know.
Did it ever cause any breakdown between you and your wife or you and your kids?
No. So my wife, she's actually done a few the courses they run for Vietnam veterans, and we're on a 5-day lifestyle Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service. I put one on up at the Central Coast, which is run pretty successfully for Vietnam veterans, and it's where the husband and wife they learn skills how to cope with one another, because there's a lot of broken marriages from the problems the Vietnams have, veterans have. And I've been fortunate that a lot of my mates, they've got good wives that stuck by them with all their problems they got. And then you get the other guys that have, you know, they've been married 2 or 3 times, you know.
How much support do you get from the system?
With the Vietnam veterans, I'm on a TPI, but it's what they call a TTI, temporary TPI. I've got to be reassessed after 18 months. So that's put a lot of pressure on me, because you think, well, you know that you physically and mentally can't go back to work, and because of somebody that gives you 1-hour diagnosis, with all the reports from psychiatrists saying that you can't, you wonder how the system works. And I'm thinking that because I say that I'm an ex-Olympian, they must think I'm Superman that's going to come back and, you know, come good. But, you know, I mean, your body can only take so much, and, you know, because there's a lot of other traumas happened to me. My wife, she had cervical cancer in 2000. My mum died in 2000. We had the Olympics in 2000. You know, my brother died of that suspicious, you know, a drinking problem. There's a lot of other things in your life that, you know, your mind and body can only take so much, and when it reaches that point, it's like an elastic band. When you stretch it, overstretch it, it can't ever come back normal again. And I can't, you know, as much as I'd like to say, I can't function without the tablets, because I've tried to get off them. And you get all these whackers saying, oh, you know, no, that's too much, but, you know, when you can actually sit down and concentrate and talk to somebody, rather than, you know, being a nervous wreck, that's the difference with the tablets, yeah. And a lot of veterans I've spoken to, we've all got the same sort of problems, you know. So.
Have you found the Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service helpful to you?
Oh, they're great, yeah. And they get me involved. I actually took a couple of guys abseiling because with me being the way I am, I feel that I might forget something. But I mean, all them years being not only a mountaineer in the army, I was a social climber. They're little things that you don't forget. But the responsibility of teaching too many other people, you know, I don't really want to do that sort of thing.
How have you celebrated Anzac Day over the years?
I usually go into town because I've got a couple of mates. We all meet in there, have a few drinks, and end up down. We used to end up down the rocks, but because they stop you from drinking on the street, they put barricades up. We go down to Circular Quay. There's a pub near there, Macquarie Place, and they've got pipe bands, and it's quite really like a family affair because my daughter's, ever since she was a young girl, my mum used to bring her in, then my sisters brought her in, now she brings herself in. And some of the other Vietnam veterans, their children come in, and it's like one big happy family, you know. And yeah, and some guys you only see for 12 months. But I'm lucky I've got a mate that works for Vietnam Veterans at Mary's, and I see him every couple of days, you know.
You mentioned to me earlier in the day that there was a point when you were called up for national service where you volunteered to go to Vietnam for money or whatever other reason. There was that one time when you stood up and put your hand up. Any regrets about that now, looking back on it?
No, not really. I just regretted I went in the wrong unit, you know, because maybe I might have been... See, you've got to realise all my life I've been a part-time player. And if you know, like, I reached the pinnacle of being a wrestler, but compared to other countries, I was like an amateur, you know. And being in the army, being a Nasho, it's like you're only a part-timer. Being in the Army Reserves, although I was in there for 6 years, I was only a part-timer, you know. Maybe if I would have put 100% into being one thing, and I suppose what I regret is I didn't, maybe if I would have picked a different unit, I might have been good at one thing instead of kind of, well, I suppose I was the best in wrestling in Australia, but you know, not in the world. Yeah, that's.
You're setting yourself
different.
pretty high standards.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's. I mean, when you talk about people wanting to win the gold medal, that's what it's like. You know, you think if I could have had that extra training, what would I have been like? You know, and that's something that you just look back on. You know, because I thought if I would have had that little bit extra training, I might have beaten the Italian and got another place up. But it's all, you know, looking back now. But I've got no regrets about Vietnam because, I mean, it was 2 years. It was an experience, you know. Like I say, the only failure I had was on the PDI course. But I think I've representing Australia in Munich kind of hit that on the head. And then when I Commando of the Year in '83, that's not too bad, considering most of our courses are all regular army run, you know. So I think I've done well, but I'm just starting to get on top of what's happened to me now because I've got some good people looking after me. And as long as you've got good friends and good wife and family, and you've got somebody there to look after your health, you know, because I mean, the longevity of Aboriginals is probably 65, so I'm 55, you know. I hope I can beat that record, you know, but being a Vietnam veteran, when you look at the Valley, you know, sometimes you think, well, if I don't get help now, that could be me, you know.
All right, John, I'll wrap this up in a minute, but any final message you want to leave behind on the archive about your service or anything? I mean, you've said a lot today, but if there's any final words you want to leave behind on the record, then...
No, well, like I said, you know, some of the best times I ever had was in the Army Reserves because you know, it was just bringing, so I missed the mateship of Vietnam, but because I was in a different unit, there was those physical challenges. It gave me something to, you know, something to excel in. It's like for my life, I've got to have one challenge after another, you know. I'll try not to let things beat me. But somehow I think the clock caught up on me. Yeah. But I'm not letting it defeat me, that's for sure. And that's really all I got to say.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.